Are you an Aussie tradie and your paperwork is shady? Do the dockers farm side keep you up late at night? Are you sick of pushing paper, swinging your tools as more you caper? Call us the tricks of your trade.
Welcome to the Tricks of Your Trade podcast, where we talk about trade business topics to help you get through business life unscathed.
Does the builder pay you late and your cash flow fluctuates? Do you dread the office work? Can't afford a full-time clerk? Consider working smarter. Don't be a business martyr. Call us the tricks of your trade.
Hello, welcome to the Tricks of Your Trade podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Serson, construction lawyer, adjudicator, and director of Tricks of Your Trade. Hello, welcome to the Tricks of Your Trade podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Serson, construction lawyer, adjudicator, and director of Tricks of Your Trade. Today on my podcast, I want to talk to you about this very annoying phrase that construction lawyers say to me all the time when I am negotiating contracts for subcontractors. Now, this is specifically something that a builder's lawyer would say rather than a subcontractor's lawyer. And they use the phrase, it's better to have a gun and not need it than to need it and not have it. And I appreciate that builders' lawyers want to try to draft contracts that automate in their client's favor as best they can, because so they tell me they don't believe their clients will properly administer the contract. So they need to do what's in their client's best interests and try to make the contract mechanize in a way that will put their client in the best possible position. Now, what inevitably happens when these contracts are drafted so heavily in favor of the builder is that it alienates the subcontractor in the situation, and it incentivizes the builder to use the bazooka that the lawyer has created for them. The builders' lawyers out there who draft these things will be thinking, yeah, that's great. That's what we wanted. We wanted it to be in our client's favor. But if you strip away the legal positions and you look at what's actually in the best interests of the parties in a commercial negotiation or in a commercial transaction, alienating one party so that they have zero agency and very little commercial ability to actually perform or achieve the obligations that are being given to them under a contract is not really conducive to actually building good buildings. So what I'm talking about here is I'm talking about non-reliance clauses in contracts that say that the subbie hasn't even relied on the drawings that the builder gave them, when everybody knows that the builder is going to hold the subbie to those drawings, and that the subcontractor entirely relied on those drawings in order to price the job. And the subbie has also entirely relied on those drawings in order to be able to vet the documents and make sure that it complies with the building code, that their trade work is going to comply. Because they can't just assume every possible scenario and say, here's a solution that will apply in every single circumstance. So that's a good example of where the drafting in a contract makes it impossible for one party to perform. And so the obligation to perform is taken away, and they just give a blanket warranty where they say, I'll cop the consequences if something goes bad because I've agreed to that warranty in the contract. Now, I don't think that actually gets us better buildings. I don't think it gets us better margins on jobs, and I don't think it gets us better outcomes for projects in terms of timing and cooperation and collaboration. And I know that that all sounds like magic fairy dust type terminology. I appreciate that there is so much more to a construction project and that there needs to be a level of control and regulation from the builders' camp over the subcontractors. Otherwise, the subbies would possibly just go rogue. And I say that with a grain of salt because I was a builder's CA. I've been on projects where subcontractors haven't turned up, where they've done the wrong thing, where staff of subbie companies have let them down. Actually, the one that springs to mind is telling this story. I remember walking into a job and having a plasterer ask me in front of the client's architect whether I was there to bring morning tea. That was really embarrassing for the plastering subcontractor whose employee made that comment, because that type of culture was not something that he emulated. And I was really young and fiery, and I gave this guy an absolute mouthful. It is one of the most cringeworthy moments I can remember having in my early days as a builder's CA. But that is a really good example of where it's understandable that builders want to have some kind of control over when the subbies turn up, what the subbies are doing in terms of quality, and all of those types of things. But using the phrase better to have a gun and not need one is easy to say when you're the one with the gun. You're leaving the other party entirely a sitting duck in terms of that situation. So the reality of saying, okay, better for the builder to have a gun and not need one, that assumes that the builder is not going to use it because they feel like it. So the other way that I like to flip that around, when you actually strip it away and look at it for what it is, what they're really saying is, I reserve my right to use my gun on you if the winds of fortune change. That is precisely what they are saying, is I reserve my right to dog you, but let's all pretend we're friends and you'll behave yourself knowing I've got the gun in the bottom drawer. So that type of philosophy to me is not the best way to build relationships. That is actually akin in my mind to some of the coercive control relationships where money is being withheld from parties to keep them under control. Retentions, good example. And look, I don't say that lightly. I don't say that in a way that where I'm sort of saying these toxic relationships in society. I'm not saying it's on that scale of personal victimization and people worrying for their safety, but it gets to a point where when subcontractors' businesses are having cash flow choked so that the builder can get them to jump through hoops that they would never have ordinarily been required to jump through, or where the subby is so worried about having the builder turn on them that they're effectively subsidizing the project. I don't think that is conducive to building good buildings. This is where I'm coming from with it. I don't think it's good for the industry. I don't think it's good long-term for the industry, but I also don't think it's actually going to get the builder or the principal a better building at the end of the project. So when lawyers of builders say this to me, I don't give them a moral lesson on what things should be like. I'm not the officer of how things should be done. The idea behind me giving you this little snippet of insight into what lawyers talk about when no one else is around is so that you can see that from their perspective, from a builder's perspective, they want to feel like they have you under control. But there are ways that you can give them peace of mind in a commercial negotiation using logic-based assurances and showing and demonstrating to the builder that your interests are aligned. It makes no sense for you to go and do whatever it is they're worried about you doing because your interests are aligned. It's a good example is where builders constantly are saying, well, if we don't have liquidated damages, how do we know you're going to complete on time? And it's like, well, every day that I pick up in this program that I could be working on another job, I'm going to make more money. Every day I don't have to pay salaries or wages to my crew to stand around and take longer to do the same thing is more money in my pocket. So our interests are aligned. The faster I complete, the faster you complete, the faster we make money. Actually articulating that to your builder can be key in that process. So it's a little bit of a spilling secrets and knowing what lawyers talk about behind the scenes about building contracts. But the reason I wanted to share that with you is so that you can have a little bit of a reality check in terms of the context around what builders think and what lawyers of builders think. And one of the things that I'm looking forward to doing next year, I'm going to be doing a collaboration project, another podcast with another construction lawyer, and he acts for a lot of builders and developers. And we're going to be really fleshing this stuff out. So I'm really excited to bring that to you guys. This podcast will stay, but I'm going to ask this guy the hardest questions, and I'm going to throw this stuff at him. We're quite good friends. We can take it when we get into these really heated debates, but it will give you some insight into the way that builders think and the reason that contracts are so heavily stacked against one party. So if you hear that phrase and somebody says to you, look, better to have a gun and not need it than to need one and not have one, one of the things that I like to do is reframe that phrase and say to them, well, hey, that tells me that you're just reserving your right to turn on me at some point in the future. Can't we just work out now what needs to be done and make sure the contract actually reflects what needs to be done rather than have this bazooka pointed at me? Like, how do you think it makes me feel when I have a bazooka pointed at me and I'm required to perform to these unrealistic obligations? It would be crazy for me to sign up to terms that are impossible for me to actually achieve, knowing that I've got a bazooka pointed at me. So giving them that context around how it takes away your agency in that negotiation can be helpful. So nice little short podcast for you. Just wanted to impart that little bit of nugget of knowledge for you about some of those conversations that take place. It's not really a niche topic today. It's just I wanted you to know that those are the things that are talked about between builders and their lawyers. If you have any questions about what I've talked about on this podcast, feel free to drop me a good old-fashioned email at questions@tricksofyourtrade.com.au. If you would like a systematic approach to your contract administration and getting paid, head on over to our website and check out the Subbies toolbox. You won't be disappointed there. And just one last time, our web address is www.tricksofyourtrade.com.au.
Are you an Aussie tradie and your paperwork is shady? Do the dockers farm side keep you up late at night? Are you sick of pushing paper, swinging your tools more you caper? Call us the tricks of your trade.
Welcome to the Tricks of Your Trade podcast, where we talk about trade business topics to help you get through business life unscathed.
Does the builder pay you late and your cash flow fluctuates? Do you dread the office work? Can't afford a full-time clerk? Consider working smarter. Don't be a business martyr. Call us the tricks of your trade.